Welcome to The Economy Magazine. I'm Natalie Ehrlich here with the latest business stories from around the world. Today we try to understand the growing wealth of the Islamic State, and we also look at some of the cleanup efforts on Wall Street in the wake of the subprime crisis. But first we start with the headlines. European Union leaders gave Russia an ultimatum on Sunday to reverse its course in Ukraine within a week or face a fresh round of sanctions. Now, this comes after Kiev pressed Europe for more action, warning it was on the brink now of full-scale war with Moscow. Fears in Europe are now mounting that the situation in Ukraine could spread to the EU's eastern borders, potentially engulfing the entire European continent. Russia has already sent troops to aid pro-Moscow separatists in the southeast of the country after annexing Crimea just earlier this year. Well, amid the rising tensions, the French President François Hollande called for a, quote, appropriate European response.
Ces sanctions peuvent être augmentées.
The sanctions can be increased, and the European Commission and Ms. Ashton have been asked to come up with a response within the week so that the 28 members can make the announcement. We're resolute on this.
While the Obama administration has said sanctions are the most effective tool in its arsenal to reverse Russia's offensive in Ukraine, U.S. Senator Dianne Feinstein argued that this new round of sanctions may prove ineffective.
People say, well, just wait till the sanctions bite and the economy slips. I don't think so. I think if Russians follow him, and up to date they are following him, the Russians are very brave and very long-suffering, and they will tough out any economic difficulty.
Well, the Israeli finance minister, Yair Lapid, said Israel's economy will take just a minor hit from the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza. Although the tourism sector took the brunt of 50 days of fighting during the all-important summer season, Lapid sounded optimistic about economic growth going forward.
We expect a small decrease in growth as a result of the operation, particularly due to the impact on tourism, but experience shows up that the growth will return, and it will return quickly and strongly, as happened after former campaigns.
And Lapid also discussed the impact of higher defense spending on the 2014 budget as a result of Operation Protective Edge.
It all has to do with what kind of expenses we're going to have on security. It is higher than we expected or wanted. But this is what happens when you have military operations. I think it's the longest military operation we had since the Israel independence war. So there's a price to be paid.
Manufacturing output in the Eurozone slipped in August, missing market expectations, now adding to signs that the region's economic recovery may need more aid from the European Central Bank. The Purchasing Managers' Index, or PMI, fell to 50.7 in August, down from 51.8 in July. Now, this crucial 50-point mark separates expansion from contraction. Although that number remains above 50, economists had expected a figure of 50.8. Well, European powerhouse Germany is now showing signs of weakness, which could endanger the entire Eurozone economy. German GDP shrank 0.2% in the second quarter after growing 0.7% in the first quarter. While part of the dip could be attributed to a mild winter and an especially strong start to the year, the Bundesbank has cast doubt on the chances of a second-half rebound. Germany has been key to propping up the entire Eurozone economy ever since the regional debt crisis erupted. Well, the European Central Bank President Mario Draghi has signaled that he is prepared now to fight the threat of deflation on the entire currency bloc, and he is willing to add more stimulus. Meanwhile, growth in Britain's manufacturing has slowed. New orders and output grew at a slower pace than before, this according to two surveys. Now, the PMI index hit at its lowest level in 14 months with a less than stellar reading of 52.5 in August. Although it did manage to stay above that all-important threshold of 50, this last reading suggests the urgency now for consumer spending to help the UK economy turn for the better by year's end. Now, the fall is attributed to a new orders component, which fell to its lowest level since April 2013 at 52.9. Also, factories put on the brakes on hiring, now at its slowest pace since last June. And after months of dialogue with U.S. regulators, the eBay of China is set to launch its U.S. IPO early just next week. And Alibaba, as it's called, is expected to fetch more than $20 billion, making it the world's largest public debut in years. Shares could start trading as early as September 18 or 19 in New York. The company's leadership initially planned to go public at the end of August, but moved the date now to September as investors were expected to still be on their summer holidays. Alibaba continues seeking regulatory approval. Well, the Islamic State has taken the world seemingly by storm. Violent videos and rhetoric coming out of areas taken over by the extremist group have shocked the entire world. But how much do we really know about what they are capable of, and how much wealth have they amassed? And what happens next? Well, Daniel Roth has this story.
The Islamic State organization has made huge gains in land and wealth over a short period of time. ABC News reported in early August that experts estimate that IS is bringing in up to $3 million a day via selling crude oil from captured areas in Iraq and Syria. According to the Wall Street Journal, the organization's income, aside from that oil money and donations from friendly states and private contributors, comes from criminal enterprise too. This includes extortion and theft, both hundreds of millions in gold and from captured central bank branches, but also from the millions now living under their control.
We have lost everything: our homes, our clothes, our money, our gold, everything.
As well, the Wall Street Journal reports that the organization finds income, albeit less consistent than oil, in hostage-taking.
The Islamic State, the group also known as ISIS, has specialized in the industry of hostage-taking, especially in regards to journalists.
According to the International Business Times, Islamic State was already worth more than $2 billion in early August, just 2 months after upping the ante on their attacks. This means it has 4 times the wealth of Hezbollah, a much more established organization in the region. As IS grows, so too does their opposition from across the region and around the world.
We are cooperating and working with with the Iraqi government and with the Kurdish government in order to repel this very serious, atrocious group that is threatening not only Iraqi Kurds and Shia and Sunnah, but also the entire Iraqi society and the entire region, and in fact the international community as a whole.
The United States has begun a limited bombing campaign as Kurds fight on the ground. Reuters reported that Kurds in Iraq have asked for support and for the international community to find a method of cutting off the group's income, which may be a tall order given the resources and wealth Islamic State already controls.
The current U.S. administration has been criticized for its lack of action against Wall Street in the wake of the subprime crisis, though it did begin to take shape before Barack Obama took office. Now, small steps are being taken, and major banks are beginning to pay up. Anthony Lesme takes us through this story.
Slowly, some American banks are paying for some of their abuse. 7 years after the subprime crisis hit, the Justice Department has so far recovered $37 billion from American banks. In November 2013, J.P. Morgan had to pay $13 billion and Citigroup $7 billion. But the record so far goes to Bank of America with $16.65 billion.
As a part of this settlement, Bank of America has acknowledged that in the years leading up to the financial crisis that devastated our economy in 2008, it, Merrill Lynch, and Countrywide sold billions of dollars of RMBS backed by toxic loans whose quality and level of risk they knowingly misrepresented to investors and to the United States government.
Much of the money will help to alleviate the effects of the subprime crisis on households that were hurt. A portion will be used to renegotiate home loans. Another part will be designed to build affordable housing.
This is one of the largest consumer relief packages we have ever assembled with a single financial institution. And its impact could benefit hundreds of thousands of Americans who are still struggling to pull themselves out from under the weight of the financial crisis. Still,
Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs remain in the crosshairs of the Justice Department. According to the Financial Times, discussions are open for an amicable agreement on possible financial sanctions. Goldman Sachs has already paid $3.15 billion of disputed loans to the housing agency of the federal government. Meanwhile, the American agency that manages both Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae has already secured 16 agreements with American banks, as well as foreign institutions such as Barclays and Deutsche Bank. Morgan Stanley has paid more than $5 billion. The Obama administration seems to be navigating a fine line between the demands of voters hurt by the crisis and the financial industry. The question remains as to whether there is sufficient political power to re-regulate the world of finance so that another crisis can be averted.
Well, now for business media highlights, we're joined by I-24 News' Daniel Roth. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
How's it going?
What can you share with us today?
Well, so the first story we have is from Salon. Salon's actually reporting on an expose from The Verge. Now, The Verge uncovered some dirty tactics that Uber was using. Uber and Lyft are new sort of taxi services, but sort of not. They enable people with cars to act as taxis via this app. Not the same as Get Taxi, not the same as taxis you might be used to. These work is sort of peer-to-peer. It's drivers connecting with passengers. And that's actually how Uber sees themselves, not as employers of drivers, but as connectors of passengers and drivers. They also use dirty tactics, it seems. The Verge uncovered this, and Salon's talking about this unregulated, uncapped capitalism that has marked Uber's presence on the scene. They're doing things like calling Lyft their competitor, ordering taxis, and then canceling them to clog up their system. They're taking rides with Lyft drivers to try to recruit them over to Uber. And the Salon piece is really looking at what does it mean that a company is able to do this? What does it mean for the industry of taxis, but also for the entire market as a whole?
Well, are there no regulations set up in place?
There are tons of regulations for taxis. This is an entirely new industry. It doesn't exist before a couple of years ago. So the question that we have to ask is not exactly what regulations are they breaking, but what are we willing and able to regulate? How can rules be made for this industry? And that's really what Salon is pointing to, is what can put a cap on Uber's kind of full court press.
Well, what were some of the dirtiest tactics that they have been doing?
Well, so as I said, they literally call up, order a ride to their competitor, and then call a few minutes later and say, actually, we don't need that ride. So there's a Lyft driver who's now not available to take someone else's call because they're already halfway to your call. They literally call up Lyft, get in their rides, and then spend the duration of the ride actually recruiting Lyft drivers over to Uber. So Uber's aim is to not only beat out Lyft, which is a competitor in the same field, but beat out other companies like Get Taxi and other taxi companies like that.
Well, what else do you have for us?
So the New York Times has this interesting piece. Apparently, a new study shows that the people are not answering their phones as much as they used to when they don't recognize the number. Caller ID is one of the main reasons for this. People using SMS instead of phone calls is a main reason for this. Now, what this is having an effect on is all kinds of things, but one of them is the unemployment rate, which may actually be much higher than previously thought. And the reason why the numbers aren't coming back accurate as they may have a few decades ago is because people literally aren't answering the surveys. It's a very simple problem that the United States government gets most of their data through surveys.
How does it skew it exactly in terms of the population?
Well, so first of all, young people, one of the highest percentages of out-of-work people, rarely answer their phones. When you have an iPhone, you can see who's calling, and it's an unrecognized number or a number that tips you off that it might be a survey or a company call. So you don't answer it, and these people are essentially left out of the system. They're left out of the survey system, and so they're not actually getting the information about populations that are the highest unemployment rates.
Well, I saw that piece. It was actually really interesting from David Leonard. And I'm curious, how much is this about smartphone use and lack of using traditional phones, and actually something else, perhaps skepticism of this younger population?
Well, so one of the big deals in recent decades has been less and less trust, particularly in America, in institutions, churches, governments, schools, what have you. Robert Putnam wrote about this over a decade ago in Bowling Alone, kind of the end of communal life in America, the end of trust in America, and the atomization of people. So people are kind of finding themselves not trusting the institutions that are supposed to give us this kind of information. And so at the end of the day, the New York Times piece is really touching on the fact that a lot of our information is wrong.
Well, thank you again very, very much for your insight as always, and you will be joining the show tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Well, that wraps up our economic coverage for now. Join our team tomorrow, same time, same place. I'm Natalie Ehrlich. Thank you again very much for watching.